Dusty, have you ever gone on a hunting trip?
Well, yeah.
You pack all your stuff. Let's say you're driving to New Hampshire. Let's say I'm driving to Ohio, and you're hunting for 4, 5, 6 days. What's the biggest challenge you usually have?
You're going to stop multiple times and get gas, and I worry about odor the whole way.
It's always in the back of your head. After talking to our friend Tim Gauthier, we realized that there's a better solution that is portable. And that solution is called the ScentLock Enforcer. This nifty little device, about the size of an iPhone, it produces ozone. Ozone is this naturally occurring O3 molecule that actually naturally removes odors, kills bacteria, binds to all kinds of odor particles in the air, and basically makes you scent-free instead of like a scent cover-up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
You can put this in your tote. It operates off of a USB and has an 8-hour battery life.
It's the personal ozone generator.
It is the personal ozone generator. If you want to check it out, go to ScentLockEnforcer.com. That's ScentLock Enforcer.com. Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, episode number 167. Jared Scheffler, a monster public land Kansas whitetail. The Hunt. Please support our sponsors as they make this show possible. Today's show is sponsored by the ScentLock Enforcer and Morse's Sporting Goods. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hey guys, this is Dan Bates with Tuned In Archery, the timeman and inventor of the Hang-On Helper. You're listening to my favorite show. It's about to be yours, Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hey, this is Dr. Ken Nordberg. You're listening to my favorite podcast on the internet, Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
I'm Tim Gauthier with ScentLock Enforcer, and you're about ready to push play on my favorite podcast, Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hey, welcome back to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. My name is Jay, and I don't know if you've tuned in before, but if you are a new listener, I want to say thank you for pushing that play button and hanging out with us for an hour or so, and maybe even listening to our back catalog to find out what all those amazing deer hunters do when they go in the deer woods so you can do it too. I am joined by my good friend and co-host Dusty Phillips from Ohio, as usual. Dusty, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great, Jay. Yeah, thank you for everybody for tuning in with us week after week. And man, if you're a new listener, boy, you've got a lot of listening to do if you go backlog our shows.
We have 167 shows as of the air date of this show, and there's a lot of them. And admittedly, and Dusty, I think you'll back me up on this, that our first show was not as good as this show, or as they have been over for the last couple of years, because you got to start somewhere.
It's like taking a young buck and little spike buck, and we've matured into a world-class whitetail, Jay.
I'm a little bit more humble. I don't know if we're quite the massive whitetail, but I know we're better than we used to be. Let's put it that way, for sure. We've got some amazing backers, some sponsors between USA Trail Cams and ScentLock Enforcer, which is our newest member to the family. Thank you, Tim Gauthier, for jumping on board with the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast. We're just looking forward to a great deer season. We have some great sponsors behind us, and this is going to be another amazing show by one of the most talented deer hunters I know, who does it in a very, very pure form. And that's Jared Scheffler from Whitetail Adrenaline. We're going to hear all about his Kansas whitetail. One of the things I wanted to highlight right now is that we have many listeners, and you can listen to the show on many different platforms. You can listen to us on Google Play. You can listen to us on iHeartRadio. You can listen to us on Apple iTunes. You can listen to us on Stitcher. And now you can listen to the whole show on YouTube. So there's 5 different major platforms that you can use to consume this show. And if you would, please go leave us a review if you haven't done so already, because it helps us understand where you're coming from and what you need, what you want to hear on this show. And speaking of that, we had a couple of emails sent in, and you can always email us Jay or Dusty at bigbuckregistry.com. And we just get some feedback now and then from listeners out there. And I have one from Austin Schweitzer. Austin writes, "Hey, Jay and Dusty, I stumbled upon your podcast last week, and man, I can't get enough of it. I have been listening to it every day while I'm at work. With archery season in Pennsylvania coming up in a couple weeks, it's getting me more excited than ever. I find myself writing down tips that I can apply to my style of hunting. I love all the guests that you guys get for the show. It's such a breath of fresh air to hear from the pros as well as the average hunter like me. I just wanted to say, hey, and keep up the great work. I just got the app and plan to tune in every week. You guys seem like awesome people, and I hope I can meet up with you guys at some point and swap stories. Good luck this season and be safe." Austin Schweitzer.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Austin.
That was great, Austin. Thank you so much for the feedback. And he makes a good point. We don't just interview the celebrity hunter. We find the talented hunter that nobody's ever heard of, and we put them on this show because they're just as valuable to the community when they share their techniques and strategies as anybody.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we're capable of doing, and we switch it up, and we chase down the average guy, and the celebrity hunter joins us now and then also. So it's kind of a great mix, and we want to hear from everybody, not just celebrities or the average Joes. We want to hear from female hunters and male hunters and young kids and disabled and veterans, and it's just all a great experience.
Everybody.
Jay, we've got another email here from Gus Mazza. Gus says, "Hey, Jay and Dusty, you guys have a great show, and I'm so happy I found your podcast last year. I've learned so much from that, and I feel better prepared for this hunting season. I wanted to share that I've hunted with Tim and his brothers in the same great outfitter in Kansas. I've become friends with them throughout the years, sharing success and our misses together in camp. They are the salt of the earth and could not be so lucky to have met them. Regards, Gus Mazza." Thanks, Gus, for emailing in. And, man, we're sure glad you found us also. And we appreciate you tuning in with us every week.
Yeah, thank you, Gus. It's always good to hear from people that are listening to the show. We know we get a lot of downloads. We're certainly breaking our own records every single month, and thank you for that. But it is nice to hear from folks listening to the show, so keep it up. We'd love to hear more from you guys as you listen to the show, and just give us some feedback. Tell us what you like or don't like, or maybe there's a guest out there. We certainly get some ideas for guests from you as you listen to the show and say, hey, you know what, this guy or this gal would be a really good addition to the show because I know that they have a few techniques and strategies that they apply to their deer woods that I bet nobody's heard about. Those are the types of stories we're looking for. Speaking of great news, let's turn to Jim Keller with the Deer News.
For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News. Our first story this week, 70 deer vasectomies on Staten Island so far. This story was originally featured on the SILive.com website and was written by Anna Sanders. A city contractor performed 70 vasectomies on male deer in the first 7 nights of a 3-year effort to cut the whitetail deer herd on Staten Island, officials said. Anthony DeNicola and his team at White Buffalo have ear-tagged 75 total deer so far, including 5 females. Those doe and 5 of the sterilized bucks were also given radio collars. The city will use these trackers to assess population dynamics, including deer mortality and birth rates. The sterilized deer were baited with whole kernel corn and captured with tranquilizer darts. They were released after the 15-minute surgery. The effort is expected to eventually reduce the burrow herd 10 to 30%. The state approved the city's vasectomy plan last month as part of a 3-year research study. This year, the Parks Department is paying White Buffalo and DeNicola $2 million for their work. The state doesn't recommend fertility control programs to manage deer because they are expensive and have shown limited effectiveness. But DeNicola and park officials have said sterilization was chosen because the city believes Staten Island's herd is mostly growing through reproduction, not migration. Sterilizing males instead of females is meant to be faster, cheaper, and more humane. What's the deal with Deet? This topic is one I thought would be on everyone's mind as we head into the woods for the early season. It is in part based on an article written by Mike Rakovics on OutdoorNews.com. Many parts of the Midwest are experiencing a massive hatch of tiny mosquitoes late in the summer. The fear of West Nile or Zika virus is creating a greater concern about mosquito bites than in years past. But at the same time, controversy over the safety of insect repellents is bound to cause some people to wonder which is less dangerous or annoying, going outdoors without the bite protection or going with it. These include, but are not limited to, smoke, citronella, some Avon products, and products containing the chemical diethyl metatoluamide, commonly referred to as Deet. DEET was developed by the U.S. government in 1951 after testing over 11,000 compounds for their effectiveness in repelling insects. DEET has been the major ingredient in nearly all insect repellents since then, and no other substance has been found to be more effective in keeping biting insects at bay. According to the EPA, nearly 100 million Americans use DEET every year, and according to the agency, fewer than 10 reports of adverse side effects are received annually. Most of these reported side effects stem from repeated use on children, something which manufacturers strongly advise against. Make no mistake, DEET is a chemical that can cause problems if applied excessively, especially to children, but then again, the same can be said for aspirin. Manufacturers of insect repellent products containing DEET say when label directions are followed carefully, DEET poses no health problems. They base their statement by citing 22 studies conducted on the short and long-term health effects of DEET, which indicate no unreasonable adverse effects to people or the environment. According to the EPA, the benefits of mosquito repellency may far outweigh any risk from DEET exposure. Some people prefer citronella-based products because they are safe. Citronella not only repels bugs, it's often used as a flavoring agent in beverages, desserts, candy, baked goods, and even breakfast cereal, but it is not effective for repelling ticks. DEET is often sold and used in spray or lotion in concentrations up to 100%. Consumer Report magazine found a direct correlation between DEET concentration and hours of protection against insect bites. 100% DEET was found to offer up to 12 hours of protection. 20 to 34% DEET offered 3 to 6 hours. 3 to 6 hours of protection. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommends 30 to 50% DEET to prevent the spread of pathogens carried by insects. As a precaution, manufacturers advise that DEET products should not be used under clothing or on damaged skin, and that preparations be washed off after they are no longer needed or between applications. DEET can act as an irritant. In rare cases, it may cause severe skin reactions. Other symptoms that can occur are breathing difficulty, burning eyes, and headaches. When used as directed, products containing between 10 and 30% DEET have been found by the American Academy of Pediatrics to be safe to use on children as well as adults, but recommends that DEET not be used on infants less than 2 months old. Hopefully this information will help as you head out into the woods this season. Help create Minnesota's first ever deer plan. This story was originally featured on the deerfriendly.com website. Applications are open for citizens interested in serving on a statewide deer management plan advisory committee that will provide guidance, input, and feedback beginning this December and continuing through the planning process. The committee's recommendations, along with broader public input, will help DNR develop its first ever deer management plan, which will provide strategic guidance on deer management into the future. 20 citizens will serve on the statewide committee. Approximately 2/3 of seats will be filled by invited representatives of hunting, agriculture, conservation, forestry, and other organizations. 5 to 7 at-large seats are available to any interested citizens who wish to apply. Priority will be given to applicants who demonstrate a willingness to work collaboratively with others from diverse perspectives and who have knowledge of deer management issues in Minnesota. The committee is expected to meet approximately monthly for 4 to 6 hours per meeting between December 2016 and December 2017. Meetings typically will be conducted during daytime business hours on weekdays at a central location such as St. Cloud and other locations of the committee's choosing. Interested applicants may complete an online application by 11 p.m. on Wednesday, October 19th, 2016. For links to this story, including links to the committee's charter and the application, as well as other stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. If you have any ideas for future topics or have questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Thanks to Jim Keller with the Deer News. Without further ado, here's Jared Scheffler.
Jared Scheffler, welcome back to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. What's happening, my friend?
I'm just trying to get ready for the season here. Keep my head above water. Thanks for having me, Jay.
Hey, no problem. So what do you do to plan for the season? I know you're leaving here in a little bit to go hunt for the rest of 2016, but what are you doing right now to get ready?
Well, you would think somebody that makes hunting videos would, be like looking at aerials and all that kind of stuff, like, getting geared up for the hunt in that way.
Yep.
But I honestly haven't done that at all. It's just like, getting new camera equipment and figuring out how you're going to mount everything up. And we just got done with the new videos here a few weeks ago. And so that's been mad rush, shipping and getting a hold of stores and getting all the orders out. And there's a lot to it that,
I could probably make a really good video off of that, everything alone. I mean, one day you're welding stuff, one day you're researching, what formats and what codecs you're going to record to, and what camera equipment's going to work for our type of production where it's like filmed all on the fly, because a lot of the stuff nowadays is more geared for, setting up and changing lenses and things like that really wouldn't work too good in our application. And so it's just, you're constantly shifting gears between different things. And, like I've only shot my longbow. Well, I had some shoulder issues here for the better part of this year. Okay. And I actually wasn't able to shoot the bow from April until just a couple of weeks ago, and whatever it was went away. And so I've only gotten like 4 or 5 shooting sessions in. Wasn't real good the first couple, but I shot again last night for a little bit, and I feel like I'm all right. I've never been a crack shot, but I feel pretty close to where I was last year. Maybe not quite there yet, but although last year, for anybody that's watched the videos, it doesn't speak too highly, I guess. But it was kind of a rough year. But I did feel the most confident I had ever felt going into last year. I shot a lot. I had, I guess I shouldn't say I had a lot more time, but I carved out a little bit more time throughout the edit stages and stuff. But this was a huge project we were working on, and with my shoulder the way it was and everything, I just wasn't able to this year. So
gotcha.
So most of what I'm getting ready for is just like all the gear and camera gear and all that kind of stuff. And honestly, like I have not looked at one map or anything or whatnot. So, which isn't always necessarily a bad thing. A lot of people, they feel like they got to know all the details about exactly where they're going to be hunting and all of that. And what I've learned over the years is when you're doing a do-it-yourself hunt, like a public land hunt, like what we do, a lot of times all that pre-gaming you do can actually emotionally attach you to that idea that this spot's going to be productive or that spot's going to be productive, and then you get there and there might be other hunters or the spot might be dead, and you have a harder time actually walking away from it. Whereas a guy like me showing up that has no previous, I haven't been looking at this piece and imagining things for the last 3-4 months or whatever. I have no attachment to it. So when I get there, I see, if it's hot, I'm sticking around. If it's cold, I can toss it. Like I don't have a lot of investment in it, if that kind of makes sense. So, I mean, ultimately, if you could invest some time into some of that and still be able to walk away from it at the snap of your fingers when it is cold, well, then you'd be one up on my strategy, I guess. So, but
that makes sense.
So it's not the end of the world.
I think getting attached to a particular piece of property can be detrimental in a lot of ways, and I think you're right. I think you have to, if you're doing public, you have to shift with the elements, and the elements could be the hunters, it could be pressure, it could be just that the spot is not anything what you thought it was, and you have to be able to move on quickly to make the most of your time where you're going. So
exactly.
Yeah, makes sense. Where are you going exactly? What's the plan?
Well, first off, I'm going to leave next Tuesday and head out to Wyoming. My cousin Jim drew a Wyoming deer tag, so we're going to try to film a whitetail hunt early season there for about 4 days, and then from there I'm going to head to, I think, Idaho for elk, and then from there I've got a Montana deer and elk license because I applied for one, didn't get drawn, but they send you a general tag, and I have no idea where I'm going to go yet there.
Okay.
And so I did do Idaho last year. I didn't get one, and I also did Colorado for elk. None of that footage from the bow stuff was on any of the videos. I'm hoping to get enough footage this year to put together like a elk bow video. So that's my goal, separate from the whitetail stuff.
You got a plan. You're heading out, getting ready for this coming season. You've got it kind of lined out, but you're not really making plans because, as more than I think anybody we've ever had on the show, you are actually a fly by the seat of your pants kind of hunter in a sense that, not that you're not looking for certain things, but you understand that things change quickly and you could scrap the whole hunt in a heartbeat because that's just what the elements are telling you, and you move on.
Correct.
And we talked about that in the last show.
Yeah. In fact, I mentioned here I got that Montana elk and deer combo license, and that's an expensive license. It's an $1,100 license, and I got plans to go to Colorado in there, and like I mentioned, Idaho. I might end up spending 2 days in Montana and scrapping the whole thing if I feel like it's going to restrict me from getting something somewhere else if it's not going well, and maybe I'd give it a little bit more time if I wasn't filming, but I don't think I would anymore because I do understand sometimes you just got to cut your losses, and I'm hoping I can do well there. But I bow hunted for elk in Colorado last year and got into them fairly well after being there a week. I finally figured out what was going on, or at that time I did. It could all change this year, of course, but that's just an example there. A few years ago, 5 years ago, Shay and I, we drove through the night, got to Missouri, never been there before, and hunted for a day. Saw a lot of deer, didn't really see anything for decent caliber deer. We checked out a new area the next morning, and it was probably around the 20th of October, and we pretty much knew that our timing was off, and we knew that going into it. We just had plans for November. We knew that would be better for Missouri, but we ended up driving that day all the way back to Wisconsin and got back with enough time to get into a piece. And I shot a 140 class 9-pointer that night, and the next day we didn't know how the shot was, so the next day we followed up. We got the deer out. And the following night, we went into a brand new piece we'd never been into before, and then Shay got one. And that was an example right there of it sucked. We both bought licenses for Missouri. We drove down there, realized, hey, this is cold. I feel like we could be a lot more productive in the next 4 or 5 days of time that we have if we turn around and go right back to Wisconsin where we came from.
Gotcha.
So
okay.
That was an example right there.
There you go.
Of just being adaptable, realizing, okay, it's not, my general rule of thumb is if I'm not feeling it, I'm turning and burning, and maybe I'll come back. Maybe I realize this spot is terrible, like I'm never coming back to it. And maybe I feel like I'm a week too early, or maybe I feel like I'm too late for it, and I'll keep it in the back of my head. Maybe next year, maybe I'll hit it a little bit earlier. Every piece is different. But if it's not hot right then, and that goes for each day, we hunt strictly on the ground, and I love doing that. And one of the reasons that I love doing that is because you can adapt so quick, so fast to what the deer are doing. If the activity is, one day it was hot, we were in here, the next day it's cold, and we can sense that in an hour that this spot is, turned right off, we can move out of there. We can pull out so quick and easy and get to the next spot or get to a different part of that same acreage. If whitetails were, if spots stayed hot for long periods of time and whitetails were really as patternable as we want them to be, we'd all be shooting big bucks all the time. You know what I mean? And they just aren't. They're constantly changing. They're constantly, and it could be like what you mentioned. It could be pressure. It could be, different crop, maybe acorns dropped, whatever it might be. It could be anything, but being adaptable is definitely what allows us to get on, a pretty good, decent number of good caliber public land deer every year.
Right. Yeah, they're not robots. They're not pre-programmed. We sometimes I think we pretend like they are, but they're not. They're completely variable items. They're going to outwit you or do something completely different than you had anticipated each and every time, for the most part.
Right. For the most part, right.
For the most part.
Every now and again, you'll find a deer that is fairly patternable if the situation's right and everything. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, yeah, they're not that predictable.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes you get lucky, but generally speaking, you don't plan on it completely. So it's been almost 2 years, and almost 100 episodes ago, that we last spoke, Jared. And that show was entitled Snooking for Whitetails. And
yeah, that's right.
Remember that? So I was wondering
Yes,
if you could define snooking for me, just so everybody could understand who hasn't listened to episode number 69, by the way, if you want to go back into the archives and find it, what snooking is to you.
Snooking is sneaking and looking at the same time. You're sneaking and you're looking. You're snooking.
There you go. Snooking.
So...
And that's why we called it snooking. So a lot has happened, Jared, since the last time we spoke. You've made some great DVDs. I absolutely love your DVDs, by the way. They're just some of my favorite deer hunting DVDs on the planet. And I can't think of anybody that really adapts to public land hunting like you do. And to boot, you're not using. I mean, you have used firearms in the past, and if I recall, you kind of gave up on the firearm and turned to the bow, and not just the bow, but it was more or less the longbow at this point. But there was some. I don't know if you shot the recurve in between. But
yeah, I guess it's not that I don't like hunting with a gun. I mean, we hunt with a gun every year, but mainly I run the camera at that time of the year.
Right.
Overall, yes, I prefer bow hunting. I do like, getting a few buddies together, having a good time. It's a good change of pace coming out of the bow stuff, and I do enjoy that. But overall, I mean, I do prefer hunting with a bow for sure.
So
but I will say this, a lot of people think hunting deer or hunting a big buck with a gun is easier, but in my opinion, I spend less time getting on a big buck with a bow than I do a big buck with a gun on public land, and that's all I've hunted for since 2007, I guess.
Right.
So, but every situation is different, but a lot of times I think what happens is by the time the bow season's done, a lot of those mature deer are pressured off of the public, and the few that are there that are still left are probably really savvy and really sneaky. So there's a lot of legwork that goes into getting a big buck on public land with a gun.
Gotcha.
In my experience.
So tell me why you shoot the longbow today as opposed to the compound or even the recurve. What's behind that?
Well, there's been a joke I've always said that I was missing them so well with a compound before, I figured I might as well just do it with a longbow. And there's a little bit of truth to that, but there's more to it than that. 2011 was the last year that I hunted with a compound, and that was the year that I killed that one that I spoke about where we drove back from Missouri, and after that I also missed 3 big bucks in a row. And I think it was September of that year, going into that season, a friend of mine had a recurve, and I spent probably about an hour shooting it, and I hadn't shot one since I was probably about 15, one of my dad's bears that were laying around the farm. And so my friend put that recurve in my hand, and I just loved it, and I could see the potential of it being a very effective weapon for how we hunted. And then what ended up happening is I missed those 3 big bucks, and I realized right away all 3 of the bucks I missed, and this happens a lot when you're hunting on the ground like how we do, and in pretty exposed situations. We're hunting whitetails on the ground, but there's not a ground blind, or anything or never, but sometimes there's hardly any cover at all, is what I'm trying to say, to hide you and the guy that's behind you filming. So you got 2 guys there, and a lot of times you're by the time you're releasing an arrow, that deer already knows you're there, and it gets really intense, and mistakes can happen. And some of the advantages to the longbow are, in my experience of what I've kind of noticed is I'd say about the average time to draw a compound and fire that arrow is about 4 seconds. If you practice it a lot, you can get pretty good at about 3 seconds. Some guys might be able to pull it off a touch earlier than that. But for the average guy, probably somewhere between 3 and 4 seconds, closer to 4. And that's a long time when you're talking about a mature deer that is locked onto you. And most of the time, if they're locked onto you by that, and they're about at the point, if they have sat around for 3-4 seconds, they're about at the point where they're probably, they're on pins and needles, and they're probably about ready to evacuate. And so when you do send that arrow, their reaction is usually pretty substantial, and oftentimes it's hard to predict. Are they going to drop 10 inches? Are they going to drop 14 inches? Are they going to take a step forward to take off to run? What are they going to do? And, the arrow speed of a longbow is slower. My arrow kicks out at about 180 feet per second. It is a 660 grain arrow, which is a lot of weight, but it really doesn't take that much longer for the arrow to actually get there. But I can shoot that bow in less than a second from the time I draw to release is less than a second. And that's a lot faster. And I can shoot that bow really low to the ground. I can, I got this position I call the cat-like position, and basically I'm just crouched down to the ground, and they can't even tell that you're a human. They might see you, but they don't even know. They can't even tell because your whole upper body isn't the shape of a human anymore. Your head's not upright like you'd have to be when you're shooting a compound. So
right.
You can also be you can stay a little more hidden. You do give up some long range, shooting. Where we've shot deer out to 60 or mid 60 yards, and some guys have pulled off quite a bit longer shots than that. Not any of us, but it's capable of the compound, whereas with the longbow, generally you're going to be in that 20 to 30 yards as typically about a max, but some guys can push it further than that.
Okay.
But I mean, 2 years ago I got that big velvet deer. I don't think I'd ever gotten a shot with a compound. And I wish the camera, when it all unfolded, I wish the camera would have been a little bit further behind where you could have seen how we were crouched in the grass to be able to really see how low profile we had to stay. And that deer knew something was up. He didn't have his peg, but he knew something was up. And I would have had to been upright to pull off the shot with a compound. I know he would have picked us off if I would have been
right.
upright. So I mean, that's a situation right there. And the older the deer, the more mature the deer, the less they're going to tolerate too. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So do you?
That's a few reasons why I guess, and I do like it. I mean, it's fun. It's cool. I mean, it's a cool experience when you're drawing that bow all on your instinct and releasing it and sending that arrow. I mean, it's a really cool feeling. So
heck yeah, it is. Do you end up making your own arrows as well? Or
no, I'm not that talented.
Not that talented. All right. I was wondering, how involved you get. I mean, it sounds like, anytime I hear that somebody's shooting a longbow, I'm like, wow, this guy's a purist. But they're obviously, you can buy longbows, and you just wonder kind of how far involved you get. And that's why I asked the question. I was curious. Very interesting.
I haven't gotten that involved. I think down the road I probably will if I had more time right now. Depending on where my life leads me down the road, I probably will get more involved. I mean, maybe someday I'll build my own longbow. I don't do that. Maybe someday I'll build my own wood arrows and all that. I shoot carbons right now. And I shoot, just a really good 2-blade head. But I do have some stone points and some wood arrows. I didn't make them. I have a buddy that made some, and maybe someday I'll try that. Just probably on one deer, the flint. I think that'd be kind of neat to shoot a deer with the old flint napped heads, and so yeah.
That's cool. Very, very cool. I wanted to kind of bring everybody up to speed with you and your adventures with Whitetail Adrenaline. When we last left off, obviously we did the snooking for whitetails, but there was this amazing event that occurred this past season in Kansas, and you shot this just monster buck with your longbow, I believe, correct? And
correct.
It's a fascinating story. It's a heck of a deer, and I wanted to try to put together the entire background on how this all came to be, because I believe that if we go back further enough, we'll probably start somewhere where we're starting tonight, with you trying to pack up all your gear and figure out codecs and all that stuff, and I don't know what the whole story is, and I actually haven't, and deliberately have not gone and read up on this, other than I've seen a picture. So I don't know a darn thing about the hunt, other than I know it happened. So I'm gonna, and I wanted to leave it that way because I want my mind to wander as we go through this story with you. And Dusty, I want you to jump in here too, and we can kind of go off on some tangents here and figure out what Jared was thinking at the time certain events occurred prior to this big monster Kansas whitetail going down.
Oh, no doubt about it. We're definitely going to go off on some tangents.
Yes. All right. So, Jared, paint this picture for me. Where did this all develop? How did this plan come together?
Well, I'll briefly go back to 2012.
Okay.
And that season was the first season that I hunted with the longbow. And we stumbled onto this area in Kansas. It was wide open. I mean, no trees, no brush, extremely short grass. Sometimes it's not any taller than your lawn. And most of the time it's less than knee-high tall grass. And that was the year the EHD hit. And I had hunted Kansas the year before in a different area. And I was coming down from Nebraska, and I wanted to check out some other stuff in case the EHD had hit this area where I had been the year before.
Okay.
And I saw the landscape, and I saw how desolate it was, and it was the middle of the day. And it was one of those deals where I told my buddy that I was with, I said, you know what? I said, there could be some giant whitetails out here, you know, but I said, I don't want to stick around all day to find out. Let's go down to this other area where I was last year. If that's ice cold in the next day or two, or if we decide tomorrow, then we can always come back and check this out further. I threw the map in the back seat, and we made it about a mile. And there stood probably at the time, the biggest typical I had ever seen. And that deer probably, he had a little bit smaller side on the one side, but he probably would have been close to 200 inches as a 5x5. And ironically, he was standing on public, a piece of walk-in hunting area, with a doe about 150 yards off the road. And, I mean, the grass there was 8 inches tall, a whopping 8 inches tall, and it's like, how the heck are we going to get close to this thing? And we had built a decoy that year, because when I was hunting the other area, I could see the potential of maybe having something like that, a decoy that we could hide behind. And we put together a game plan, and long story short, the decoy ended up spooking the doe out, which took him away. I got within probably 80 to 100 yards of him. But that whole deal and that whole season, we ended up getting one good buck, and we got on some other big bucks. Never saw that specific deer again, but we kind of started to chip at the strategy and our approach for hunting these deer in this type of setting.
Okay.
There's nobody else I've ever seen out there bow hunting this stuff.
Interesting.
In the 4 or 5 seasons, not in any of this open country. I mean, it's that open. I've seen guys with tree stands and stuff in the back of their pickups that they must be bow hunting, but I only see their vehicle for about a day, and I think they are like, what are we going to do with this?
Okay.
And I mean, it's a very mentally draining hunt. It's not uncommon for us to spend 3 solid days in the vehicle and never get out of it, and put on 800-900 miles on gravel roads. I mean, 300 plus miles a day are pretty common.
Wow.
Out there in that type of country.
Okay.
Because you're not getting out of the vehicle until you get a visual, because there's really no point. I mean, if I can look at 160 acres of knee-high grass, I can pretty well see if there's a deer out there or not. Now, once you have one spotted, then it's like, okay, how can we, a lot of times they're really gun shy. If they're within a quarter mile of the road, they might already be running without you ever stopping the vehicle. You definitely don't want to stop the vehicle within a half a mile of them, because they will most of the time run. So that's the next stage, is once you do spot a big one and he's on public, then you got to figure out, okay, how can we, not alert him while we're in the vehicle here, and get the vehicle parked in a spot where he's not going to see it, and make our strategy from there. So there's a lot to it. It's a very frustrating hunt. It's a very mentally draining hunt. And it is very physical once you have to get out of the vehicle, because you might end up crawling for 200 yards.
Right.
On your hands and knees to get within 100 yards, and the doe that he might be with decides, you know what, I don't like your decoy setup, I'm out of here.
Right.
And then there you go, back to the vehicle, and you know that it might be 2 days before you get out of the vehicle again. So it's a very mentally draining hunt.
Okay. Dusty, did you have a question you want to?
I can't get Jared to slow up for a second.
Yeah, go ahead, Dusty. Sorry.
No, just trying to get a better visual. Now, when you say it's, an 8-inch grass, what is it? Just field grass or prairie grass? What are we talking about?
It's mainly just prairie grass, and most of it's walk-in hunting area. So it's privately owned, and the state leases it. So sometimes they got cattle, sometimes they got horses, sometimes they got winter wheat. That's the length of your grass that's growing out there.
Gotcha.
Occasionally we find a piece where there is a little bit taller grass, might be waist high or whatnot, but for the most part, usually it's pretty short, desolate stuff.
Is there fences that border these properties, or you guys have to go through gates? Tell us a little bit more detail of how you're getting around.
Yeah, there's really never any gates. Usually, a lot of times there's some sort of fence line, but not always. Sometimes it's just an imaginary line, and there's no line fence at all in some situations. And and the reason for that is and I don't dig into this, but because it's walk-in, it's very likely that the same landowner owns the next part of that land, and he just didn't enroll that in the program. And years ago they ripped out the fence line, and so it's an imaginary line there, kind of where it is. Usually about every quarter mile, I think it is, they'll have like a fence post or something with a sign on it. But it's pretty square. Usually the parcels are square, so you don't. It's not really hard to know whether you're not going to get turned around out there or anything like that. You'll know if you're on it or off it. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was just curious, just because of the fact that if it's posted public walk-in and you get off of that, then what?
Yeah, then you'd probably get in some trouble.
Gotcha. Okay.
Gotcha. So your story with this buck starts in 2012, 3 years prior to the actual.
That actually wasn't the same buck.
Okay.
That was a different buck, but what that did is. That buck, and there was a couple other really big ones we saw that year. We knew we have to figure out a way to hunt these deer in this type of terrain.
Gotcha.
No matter how difficult it is, these big deer are here. We got to figure out how we can hunt them. So that kind of set the tone for it, I guess. And every year, since then, we've seen at least a 160 caliber deer. Usually, we see at least a couple in the 170 class or close to it out there. But here again, you got to remember, we put on a lot of miles on those gravel roads, and drive the car a half mile, stop, glass, and sometimes we spot these deer from a mile and a half. We've spotted them 2 miles out sometimes. There's a lot of glassing and a lot of sitting in a vehicle on gravel roads that happens all day long. So they're visible, but you also got to remember we condense everything down into a video. Well, it might be an hour section of our video, and it might feel like there's big bucks running everywhere, but that's condensed down from 8, 9, 10 days of being out there and pushing really hard. So.
Gotcha. All right. So the land, you noticed that there are some unusually large bucks on this property. So that's what drew you to this place.
Yeah, that general area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we got to figure this out. That we need to crack this code.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So at what point did you start to engage with this particular buck?
Okay. Well, the first time that for this last season with this big deer, my buddy Chancey is the first. We've been friends a long time. It was the first hunt that we got to do together, and Shay didn't draw the tag for this last year, and so Chancey and I had, and so we were doing the hunt together, and it was on day 2 we spotted this giant buck, and we knew 170. We thought probably closer to 180, and he was on private, and the closest public was about 3/4 of a mile from where he was,
okay.
And it was one of those deals where it's like, that happens a lot out there. Most of the time when you see a big buck, he's on private land. And, you might see him again. It might be the next day. It could be a few days later, and you're just hoping that at some point you'll catch one of them on public.
Right.
And that was the case with that deer. We got a little bit of footage of him, and we tried to locate him the next morning. We knew that there was a decent chance sometime while we were there he was going to be on that public.
Okay.
Because out there, 3/4 of a mile is a cakewalk to those deer. I mean, that's a 5-minute jaunt for them.
Right.
I mean, we watched a buck one time that first season go 5.5 miles without stopping. He got kicked out by pheasant hunters, and he went 5.5 miles.
Wow.
So they cover ground.
Right.
And so
let's go on a tangent on that. How did you get the visual on that to see it go 5 miles? What was your perspective?
We had seen him about a mile away while we were going after this other big buck, and we thought that he went into this little sliver of trees that was right next to some public. It was it led right to the public, but where we figured he was about 200 yards from the public, and it was opening day of pheasant hunting. And so we staked that out from a high point with the car and waited, and it took about an hour, and some pheasant hunters came in there and flushed him out. And unfortunately, being our first year hunting there, we didn't know that these deer covered ground like that.
Right.
And so he blew through the public into a 2 mile by 2 mile section, which we thought, okay, it's pretty much all private, but way across 2 miles on the other side was a couple strips of public that we hadn't driven by yet. We thought, well, let's drive around the square and see what they look like. We drive around the square. By that point, we thought, well, it's over with that buck, at least for that day. Well, here he comes running out right in front of our car. He blew right through that 2 mile section. Well, then we got to a high spot and watched him, and he just kept going. And we relocated once we lost visual on him to another high point and picked him up again. And he finally stopped in a little old building site or whatever, which was private.
Yep.
But yeah, they covered ground.
Wow. That's
so,
crazy. What time of year are you out here after the whitetail we're discussing?
Usually about I head out there about November 7th, 8th, which you usually have to deal with some pheasant hunters about that time.
Okay.
And whatnot. So about the second week in November.
Okay.
If is probably about more second and third week, probably the best weeks to be there in my opinion.
Gotcha.
Or my experience.
I got to ask a quick question. What kind of unit are you driving these days? Last time we talked to you had the old shag and wagon van.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, that's at a scrapyard now. But the motor went on that. But we got a trusty Grand Caravan we've been rolling in. So.
Oh yeah,
a Grand Caravan. All right.
Yeah. It's nice and reliable and fuel efficient, and it's roomy. It's not quite as nice as the old '88 Econoline conversion van. I mean that was comfortable, but
how many bucks can you get on the new unit on the top of it?
On the minivan? Oh, you could probably get. I bet if you really tried, you could get 3 of them up there. So, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, so you're out there in November, and
yep.
You've got a visual at one point on this deer, and he is 3/4 of a mile away from any kind of public land.
From any kind of public. So basically, sometimes in some situations, depending on what it is, you might stake that deer out for half a day and watch him from a long ways away and just see what he does. But he was in a little tiny creek bottom with some trees, and he had a doe, and with that, a little activity of us spotting him by the road and stopping the car, and the car was between him and the public, we knew that there was probably a very, very slim chance that he was going to head, out of there and into the public that day. So, so we, moved on to try to find something else, and, keep it in the back of our head, like hopefully we'll catch this big deer out on that piece of public, or, there's other public couple 3 miles away, maybe we'll catch him on one of those pieces, but most likely we'll if we do catch him, he'll be out on this one that's close.
Right.
And so it's just a mental note, but you don't want to put all your eggs in that basket, And so the next morning, we took a drive up that same road because you can kind of see the backside of that public from that road. And I didn't get the camera on him in time, and it was really low light conditions, but we saw him again, and he made a V-line across the road and back into the private. He wasn't on public. The private was on both sides of the road, but back further away from the public, he went back into this creek bottom. So we got another visual on him, you know, pretty much again, you know, he's probably not coming out of there for the day.
Right.
So we moved on. Well, then, you know, a few days goes by. We're on day 5. We finally get an opportunity on a pretty good caliber deer, 150 class, so we go after him. That went south, and then that night we were glassing some different pieces, and this was about 2.5 miles from where we had seen that giant. And I didn't know at the time, but I know it now. It was him, and he was right on the back edge of the public. He might have been on public. He was within 20 yards of it. It was just too hard to tell exactly from a half mile away.
Okay.
And it was flat, so there wasn't anything. He was close, and I'm pretty sure at one point he was on it. His doe was. I knew that, but we made an effort to go after him. But by the time we got back there, he wasn't there. There was kind of like a little rise right there, and he must have went over it on the private. But I knew it was a giant deer, and I know it was him.
Okay.
Anyway, so we got another visual on a giant. You know, thought maybe it was that one, but anyways.
But weren't sure.
Next day,
at that point, you were like, it might be. It's definitely a nice deer. We're going after it, no matter what.
Yeah. Well, I definitely knew it was at least a 180 caliber deer.
Okay.
I mean, it was just I could see the tines. They were tall. They were darker.
Yeah.
And I knew right away that it was a giant. So next day comes. We get back on this 150 class deer, and that went south again. And so let's see, we were on to day 7. Not much happened on day 7, and then day 8, in the morning. You know, here again, we're driving all these gravel roads trying to get a visual on a big buck. On public.
What is morale like when you head back to camp in the evening and you've pursued a couple of 150s twice, you can't get on them? What's that feel like? I mean, are you down and out at that point? Are you just like, hey, it's no big deal, it's part of hunting?
Yeah, I mean, usually Shay is with me, and he keeps things pretty light. And Chancey is the same way. I mean, he has a good time. You know, we're both definitely getting frustrated about the situation because, you know, we hadn't had a whole lot of good attempts at that point. You know, I mean, in 7 days, you know, there was like a 3-day stretch there where here we didn't get out of the vehicle, you know, and so it does start to, you know, you go through different periods. You know, you're frustrated and you're kind of down in the dumps, and then you find something to just, you know, crack a joke or whatever it might be, you know, and I think with this new video, you really sense that a little bit more. You see the, you know, making fun, you know, I mean, we see a little spike buck and we're, you know, making jokes about it or whatever, you know, I mean, you do anything to kind of get your spirits back lifted up, just having a good time and
gotcha
and whatnot. But you're definitely frustrated at the same time. And by the end of the day, you're pretty well wiped because, you know, you're getting up an hour before the sun comes up, grabbing a little breakfast from the gas station and getting out in the vehicle, and you might eat sometime during the day, but you might not eat for 12 hours. And then when you do get back, it's like, man, let's grab a bite to eat. Let's grab, you know, so we get a bite to eat. Well, Then it's like we got to recharge all these batteries, dump all these footage files, get everything ready to go the next day. And pretty soon, before you know it, you know, it's 10, 11 o'clock at night, and you're getting back up the next morning to do it all over again.
Right. Daylight's right around the corner at that point.
Right.
Man. All right. Yep, I get it. All right, so now you're 6 or 7 days into this hunt. We're 7 days in. We're on day 8 now in the morning, and you know, we're driving around. We're not seeing. We haven't seen. I don't think we had seen a big buck. Maybe we saw one right at sunup, but I can't remember off the top of my head. You'd think after editing that video for all those hours, I'd remember, but you don't.
All the days kind of come to, you know, get a little blurry then. But I do know this. I do know that we had driven up this gravel road 3 times, and it was about an hour. This was our 3rd time driving up this road, and it was about an hour after sunup. And that happens out there. I mean, as open as it is, you can drive up a road and feel like you can see everything for the next mile, and you can glass it and everything, and you could drive up that road 15, 20 minutes later, and there's a big buck standing out there, and it's like, where did you come from? And that's exactly what happened. You know, we had been up that road twice that morning. You know, you can see everything within a half a mile, and most of it you can see within a mile and a half. And there he was, 150 yards off the road with a doe. Took off running, of course, right away. He was on private. I'm actually glad he was on private at the time, because once they start running, a lot of times they don't slow down for a while,
right,
even if you don't park. And
right,
he ended up, we just kept the vehicle rolling, and he kept running. He ran out to probably 600-700 yards from the road, and we got you know, a ways away from him, probably about a mile.
Okay.
And then I got the spot and scope on him and realized, yep, that's that giant. And they were on private. They were still probably, pushing a half a mile from the public.
Okay.
But there was on the piece of private they were on, there was a little weedy draw where there were some taller weeds, you know, maybe anywhere from waist high to, you know, just under your chest.
Okay.
High weeds. And it kind of went into a little bit of a low spot. Not much of one, but just enough that they had put on the brakes, and I felt like they weren't probably going to go anywhere, you know, too fast at that point. So we drove the vehicle for a mile to get all the way on the other side of the public, and then we walked the far public line in, so we're a mile from this deer right now.
Okay.
We walked that in a half mile. It was a 160-acre piece of walk-in. So we walked that in, the back line, and then we 90'd to come back towards him, because we could come a half mile to him, and we got right on the fence line, basically about probably 20-30 yards from the fence line.
Right.
And there actually wasn't a fence there. There was just kind of like what we talked about earlier. Sometimes there's a fence line, sometimes there's just posts. In this case, there was just posts. There was no fence, which makes it easy for deer to cross or whatever. But then we just sat there, and it was all up to fate at that point, whether he was going to, him and his doe were going to come our way or not. And from the time we spotted him to the time he came was 8 hours. Okay,
and what time of day is this now when you've hoofed it in 160 acres?
It was about 8 a.m. when we spotted him. It was about 4 p.m. when he finally crossed the line.
Okay, so let's go on just a little tangent here. What were you geared up with at that point? You're in a car, you spot them, you know the direction they might be heading. What are you geared with? What are you wearing? What do you got for shoes? That kind of thing.
Well, it's funny you should ask that, because I never really, you know, I guess that never really got disclosed in the video, but or you know, there was nothing about it, but actually all we were wearing was spray painted clothes from Walmart. True story. Chancey, who I was with, he picked up a pair of khakis from Walmart for the two of us, and then he took it was like a thermal top, and he just kind of spray painted that and spray painted the pants a little bit, and to kind of, you know, make it look a little bit like blend in well out in that open grass. You know, we've tried ghillie suits and stuff, but ghillie suits have a lot of issues in wide open areas unless you're laying flat to the ground, because once you get the sun on the other side of you, it's really dark on the other side of a ghillie suit, because all the bunches of material, you get all these like little hills and valleys, and so they end up being super dark on the one side. So we've tried a number of different things, and honestly, I think that's about the best thing that we've come up with at this point. If we spent some time on it, but here again, it's one of those things that a lot of times we don't have a lot of time to devote to that, but that seemed to work pretty good. So that's what we're geared with. And then we had the decoy that we made, which we had made changes to it since the first year when it didn't work real well. And so basically in that wide open stuff, like while this deer, even though this deer is way out there, we can see him out there. And so we kind of used that decoy to shield us, you know, while we made our, you know, move to get close to the fence line.
Okay, gotcha. So you got some spray painted khakis. You didn't care about the spray paint and the smell and all that point?
No, and I think by that point most of that was gone. But it's one of those deals where, especially out there in Kansas, where generally the wind blows pretty straight line. You don't get a lot of variance. So they've got a pretty small range where they have to be directly downwind in order for them to smell you. And usually we can manipulate that pretty well. In this case, we had to kind of predict where they would cross the line and try and set up downwind of that. Usually we've already got a deer spotted on public, and so we can just kind of manipulate what side we're going to come at them from. And so usually that's not an issue. What I have found is, spray painted or not, with two guys out there, as much as we're in and out of vehicles and moving around and stuff, they're probably going to smell you either way, whether it's spray paint or your regular body odor. So
Gotcha. All right. So you're working and playing the wind as best you can in order to make this happen. And is a silent approach in your bag of tricks? Is it something you have to really focus on as far as noise control?
Yeah, usually not out there. Usually you've got a decent amount of wind out there.
Okay.
So usually that's not an issue. It definitely wasn't an issue with this deer because he was still so far onto the private. In this case, this was really short grass where we set up. In fact, it was probably, 8 inches tall at the tallest point. So you could probably just about see the deer's hooves. But fortunately, several years ago, somebody must have did some round bales or something, and there happened to be a round bale right there. And it was really run down, but once we got to it, we kind of propped it up and fluffed it a little bit and made just enough cover to where, we knew that there was still a pretty good chance that once they crossed the line, they would have us pegged, which here again, that kind of comes back to, I'm glad I had a longbow in that situation, because I knew that there's a pretty good chance they'd have us pegged. It's hard to say that, you might have been able to get that deer with a compound, but the doe had us pegged before he did. When they crossed the line, the doe stayed out about 40, 50 yards, and she kind of did this half circle around us, staying about 40, 50 yards away.
Okay.
And he dropped into this tiny little ditch. It's flat out there, but there was like a hole, like a water run ditch. And it wasn't very big. It was, maybe only a few yards wide by 30 yards long and about 4 or 5 feet deep. And for whatever reason, he dropped into that.
Okay.
And I thought the ditch kept going for a ways further. And so knowing that the doe had made it by us and she was out about 40, 50 yards, I thought, well, my only chance to get a shot at this deer is going to be for me to grab this decoy. And while he's in the ditch, he can't see me with the decoy. And the doe doesn't have us pegged yet. So I was like, if I just take this decoy, if I move 5 yards towards her and he comes out of that ditch, he's going to come right over to me right away. Right. Was my thought.
Right.
Well, this doe had been facing away, looking away for the last, few minutes. And I made a rookie mistake and I took my eyes off her when I moved. And that's never a good thing. You should always, look where you're going to go and then put your eyes back on them and then make your movement while you're looking at them. So that way, if they, do anything, like look towards you, you can just freeze. Well, I didn't. I just, she's been looking that way the whole time, and kind of in a panic, I reached to grab that thing and she picked us off.
Okay.
Well, then she's frozen, locked onto us. And it was probably about 10 seconds later, he popped his head out of that ditch and he knew right away, what's going on with her?
Why is she all defensive stance?
Exactly. And he probably paused for, 15, 20 seconds. And then he comes up out of that ditch. And right away he starts kind of heading, angling towards us. And he actually grunted several times in there. And I think he read her reaction wrong. And I think he thought that there was maybe another buck that he couldn't see on the other side of that propped up round bale.
Gotcha.
And I think he was coming to head it off. Well, then he got to about 20 yards, and I had a small clump that I'd moved out on that side to give us a little bit of cover. It was about 2 feet high, this clump. But he got to about 20 yards, and now I couldn't see him. I had to wait for him to come past. And, well, of course, he picked off Chansey, who was fully exposed at that point. He had the back of the round bale, but from the front side you could see him plain as day. And he picked Chansey off, but I didn't know that at the time because I had that little clump in front of me.
Right.
And he didn't come out the other side, and I knew right away. I was like, he's got us tagged. And you know, it was like, do I you know, at that point it's like, okay, do I come up over the top in a fast motion, draw and shoot all in one
right.
motion, or do I just, you know, wait? And I thought, you know what, he's got his doe there, he's going to come, he might be on a trot when he does it, but I think I'll be better suited to do it just wait. And so that's what I did. And the first instance I saw of him was he was staring right at us, and he turned his head and started to take off on a trot. And it was now or never. And he was about 15 yards out, not that far.
Yep.
And I draw and shot, and I didn't make a good shot. So
Okay.
when I was editing the footage, I kind of realized what happened there, because I slowed the footage down and went frame by frame, and I was on the deer, I think, right where I needed to be, and I think at the last second, well, you can see it in the slow motion shot, but I pulled the bow ahead, and I think I thought he was going to pick up speed, but at the same time, I dropped my bow arm, which wasn't a good thing, and but, you know, honestly, I think that's just the way it was meant to unfold, and because of it, we were able to document a really bizarre storyline. You know, if I'd have aced that shot, it would have been cool or whatever, but it wouldn't have built near the story it ended up building. So basically that arrow hit his front leg right at about the kneecap as he was trotting. And I noticed right away he had a limp to it. And I wasn't 100% sure I broke his leg, but I thought it had because of his gimp.
Yeah.
And so as he was trotting, I grabbed another arrow, and he was probably about 60 yards out. And at that point, you know, I thought his leg was probably broke, but I sent another arrow, and I just barely missed him. And now he's headed back onto the private, and he's still following his doe. And we watched him go over the rise several hundred yards away, probably 600-700 yards away. And we knew that there was a small woodlot about a mile and a quarter in that direction. And we knew that there was a pretty good chance he was going to head over there. Now it was private, you know, and at this point, you know, you're like, man, how did I screw up that shot so bad? And you're running all this through your head, and you're like, okay, forget about what happened. We just got to figure out, you know, how we can maybe go after this deer.
Right.
You know, we're going to have to go talk and get permission. Now, Kansas law is if you have blood, you can cross, you can leave your weapon behind, cross, and go get the deer. But we don't have any blood, we know that. So it's going to come down to, you know, tracking down the landowner. Well, it had rained the day before, and so we knew that road over there was a dirt road, and we knew that we could probably figure out where he crossed that road. We couldn't see it from where we were at, but
Gotcha.
But we figured, well, let's drive around there. Let's see if we can figure out, you know, where he crossed the road, and from that we should be able to determine where he went, and then maybe we can get permission. So we drive around there. We get on this. It's more or less a dirt mud road. It's not a gravel road, and in fact, Chansey had to get out and push the vehicle, and I mean, we were getting a little bit stuck or whatever. Yeah. But Chansey ended up finding the buck's track while he was out of the van, and we could see, or he could see, that it was headed right into those trees that we thought he had maybe went into that now they're about a few hundred yards from us. So in the meantime, while he was pushing on the van, I noticed this truck had pulled up the road, and he had stopped, and he was, you know, I think what he was thinking was, what are them guys doing? Are they up to no good or what? Well, then it pulled into this little woodlot where this deer went, and or where we were pretty sure that was his track going to. And so Chansey jumped in the vehicle, and I said, well, let's pull up here and see if we can talk to this guy. And as we were pulling up the dirt road, the buck runs out of the woods right in front of us, and is running. Now he's running down that dirt road, and now he heads into another piece of private, and right behind him was the truck, actually.
Really?
It was kind of funny because, well, not funny, but I mean, it was kind of bizarre because we're pulling up the road. This buck comes running out of the woods, and there's the truck right behind him. Well, then the truck had to wait for us because we were like literally right behind the deer. And then, he went into this piece of private. I stopped the vehicle, got out and talked to this fella, and he had seen that the deer had the broken leg, which by that point we knew, the leg was broke after I made that second shot and
right.
glassed, and you could see that it was definitely broke. And so I talked to this fella and explained the whole thing to him, and he was really cool. And he said, however many days you're here, if you feel like he's on my land, you can search it. And so that was a relief. And he had actually he had already contacted the other landowner where the deer had went. I guess when he saw our vehicle on the road, he thought it looked a little suspicious, when we were out on that road. And so he made contact with the other landowner. So he was already headed over that way. So when he showed up, he was a little bit more apprehensive. And I don't think we'd ever gotten permission had this other fella not seen the deer. Yeah. And everything. I don't think we'd ever gotten permission to go in there. He ended up being a really nice guy. He gave us permission to go in. Well, now we've only got, a half hour light left, and it's like, okay, we know we have a non-vital hit on this deer. The general rule of thumb is typically when in doubt, back out. I think that only applies to certain situations. If you've got a vital hit, then that's definitely a lot of times a good play. But when you have a non-vital hit and you have a bead on the deer's location and it's going to take a follow-up shot, well, then oftentimes it's better to be aggressive. In this case, because we didn't have much light left, in hindsight, we probably should have let him go till the next day, but we also didn't know whether this guy was going to let us go into the next day.
Right.
And so we wanted to try to make hay while the sun shined and try and get on him yet that day. So that's what we did right as it was pretty much dark out. I mean, I seen the buck come out. He was about 150 yards from me, but I mean, it was so dark I couldn't tell it was his rack. I could just tell from his gait that it was him. Yep. And there was nothing I could do. I couldn't pick him up with the naked eye. I picked him up with the binoculars. And so the buck looped into a different part of different half of the section. And by this point, this deer has gone just over 2.5 miles since the initial shot.
Wow.
So he's covered a lot of ground.
With a broken leg.
With a broken leg, yep. And so we got back out to the vehicle, and the second landowner was waiting for us there. And here again, he ended up being super nice. At first, he was kind of apprehensive, but he said, if you want to go in there tomorrow, that's fine. And that was a huge relief because we didn't know at that point if it was just kind of like, yeah, you can go look for him tonight, but after tonight, we kind of felt like that was maybe the way it was going to fall. But he gave us permission going in the next day, and we're pretty positive about it. We knew that if we had enough daylight, we could probably figure out a way to get a follow-up shot on this deer. And we felt like with that leg and the amount of ground he covered, we felt like he'd probably be in the other part of that section because there was some trees and there was some water down in there.
Well, thanks to Jared Scheffler for joining us on the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast as we played part 1. And you're going to have to tune in next week to hear the finale and find out how Jared takes down this monster Kansas whitetail for good. And it's a stunning story. And to think that he actually arrowed the thing in the leg and it just ran everywhere. And we ended this show just as the sunlight goes down. And then we're going to pick up next week as the sun rises, as Jared gets back on the trail of this big buck. And it's just so many twists and turns. It's unbelievable. So tune in next week for the finale of Jared Scheffler's Kansas whitetail hunt and see what happens.
It's a hunt you don't want to miss. That's for sure. The finishing, the ending to the story.
The ending is quite amazing.
To be continued.
To be continued. Dusty, do we have a Chubby Tines tip of the week this week?
Yeah, we do, Jay. And it's we're going to talk a little bit about what's happening, pretty much launching off this week. And
the Chubby Tines tip of the week is sponsored by Morse's Sporting Goods. Firearms, used firearms, bows, used bows, located at 85 Kentucky Falls Road in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. give Jim a call at 603-464-3444, morsessportinggoods.com. Your dollars go further in New Hampshire. There's no sales tax. Morse's Sporting Goods.
You know, here in the Midwest, the crops are coming down, and with the crops coming off the fields, and the deer are going to start utilizing morning and evening breakfast and dinner on the edges of these crop fields. You know, if you're somewhere that you don't have crops, it might be something you don't understand. But right now, my focal point is, season opens today here in Ohio, the 24th, and it's just that time of year where you can sit along a freshly cut cornfield or soybean field, and these whitetail they're naturally going to be out there grazing for missed corn or corn that's fallen off the corn head, or beans that's come out of the bean head or the back of the combine, or maybe they spilled a pile of corn, turned in there too much in their hopper. But, you focus on these field edges, and it's something that, if you play the wind and you play the fresh harvest, the deer curiosity really gets the best of them when it comes to freshly cut fields. And it's something that's been proven deadly for a great long time now, that these deer are going naturally, it's almost like they don't realize the corn's down and people can see them for the first week or so. So that I'm going to focus on hunting the edge of freshly cut crops for the first 2 weeks. And it seems to be a great focal point for me to be able to kill a mature buck.
It's a great tip. I'm going to follow your lead there. I'm going to do that as well as the corn starts to get cut here in New Hampshire. Actually, I found one field that had been completely cut. And so that's an indicator that the rest are soon to follow. So I'm going to follow your lead.
Yeah, it don't work all season, but first couple of weeks here, kicking off season here in Ohio, it's really, your success rate's really good on the edge of a freshly cut field. Man, it's been proven that that theory works really good first few weeks of season.
Gotcha. Very nice. Well, thanks to Jared Scheffler for joining us on the Big Buck Podcast. Stay tuned for next week to the finale. It's a to be continued. You do not want to miss that. Thank you to USA Trail Camps for being the title sponsor on the show. Thank you to ScentLock and Forcer for joining the Big Buck Registry family. We're looking forward to working with those guys. And thank you to Morse's Sporting Goods for sponsoring the Chubby Tines Tip of the Week. Well, Dusty, this has been a fantastic show. I can't wait for next week because it's a great ending, and it's just awesome talking deer hunting. And you know what? Thank you to you, the person that pushed the play button. We can't thank you enough for tuning in once again.
Yeah, absolutely, Jay. And it's a great honor that you join us week after week, man. It really is a great honor for us, and we sure do appreciate everybody tuning in. And thanks for the downloads and the comments and the likes and on the social media. And man, it's amazing what this all has brought to the table, Jay, and we're appreciative of it. That's for sure.
Very much so. So, Dusty, where can the listeners find you when you're not hanging out here on the mic?
Shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. I'll be glad to talk with you, and I try to respond to all emails and get back to you in a timely fashion. Some days that it don't work that way, but I sure try. I try real hard to communicate with the people that has emailed me. You can also reach me on Instagram @ChasingAntler, Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. Jay, where can the people reach out to you when you're not on the mic?
Best place is to shoot me an email, jay@bigbuckregistry.com. I do respond to all emails, so please send me an email if you have any comments or suggestions. And you can always follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/bigbuckregistry, Twitter at twitter.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Instagram, instagram.com/bigbuckregistry. You can find us on YouTube, and that's bigbuckregistry.com/YouTube. So I think that's pretty much everywhere we're hanging out. If you'd like to have your buck featured on the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Facebook page, go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and all of the instructions will be right there for you about how to get it to us. And we don't put them all up there. We are somewhat selective, but if you could, the way you get on there is to send us a picture of you with your buck and give us your first name and the state of kill. And most likely it will appear upon our page in front of 250,000 diehard deer hunting fans. Pretty much no questions asked there. Follow us on iTunes, follow us on Stitcher, YouTube, iHeartRadio. Go to Google and type in Big Buck Registry, and you'll find all the places that we're at. You can listen to our show on our Facebook page as well at bigbuckregistry.com. Dusty, I think that's everywhere we are at.
There's a whole lot of big buck, Jay. Thanks again to the folks and friends, and you like family to us for the downloads. And man, it's just a great journey, Jay. Glad to be here.
Likewise, I'm Jay Scott.
And I'm Dusty Phillips.
This is the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast. We'll see you next week.
Can't wait.